Hey everyone, 99% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's change that. Hit that subscribe button, and at 1,000 subscribers, we'll drop special stories just for you.
Zyra had been taught 3 rules about humans. Rule 1, they are giants. Rule 2, they are unpredictable. Rule 3, they will eat anything smaller than them. Unfortunately, Zyra was very small. Her reconnaissance pod had never been meant to land on Earth. It was designed for high-atmosphere scans, quick in, quick out. But something had gone wrong during descent. A violent electrical surge, a burst of static across her control panel, and then impact. Now the pod lay half buried in soft soil, its silver shell dimmed and cracked. Faint smoke curling from its rear thrusters. The one smooth control interface flickered weakly, displaying broken symbols and error signals in her native script. Zyra hovered just outside the hatch, her translucent wings buzzing unevenly. "This is bad," she muttered to herself. Her suit adjusted automatically, shrinking her form to conserve energy. At full size, she stood about as tall as a human hand. But now, in emergency mode, she was no larger than a finger. It made her harder to detect, but also far more vulnerable. The world around her was overwhelming. Blades of grass towered like green skyscrapers. Droplets of water clung to their edges like suspended spheres, reflecting distorted fragments of sky. The air was thick with unfamiliar scents, earthy, sweet, and sharp all at once. And the sounds, everything was loud. A distant chirp rattled through her bones. The rustle of leaves felt like a storm. Even the wind carried a low, constant roar. Zyra steadied herself, forcing her breathing to slow. "Stay calm. Assess. Adapt," she whispered, repeating her training. But training had never quite captured the fear. She glanced back at her pod. The core was unstable. She could feel it. A faint hum in the air, a pressure that made her skin prickle. She couldn't stay here. With a deep breath, Zyra darted toward a cluster of dense vegetation nearby. The leaves formed a natural canopy, shielding her from above. It wasn't much, but it was something. She crouched beneath a curved stem, hugging her arms to her chest. "Okay," she said softly. "New plan. Stay hidden. Stay alive." Her mind raced with everything she knew about Earth. A Class 3 biosphere, oxygen-rich, diverse life forms, dominant species, humans, predators. Her antennae twitched. A vibration. Zyra froze. At first, it was faint, barely noticeable beneath the constant hum of the environment. But it grew stronger. Rhythmic. Thump, thump, thump. Her eyes widened. "No," she whispered. She pressed herself against the ground, wings folding tightly against her back. The vibrations intensified, shaking loose tiny bits of soil around her. A shadow stretched across the grass, long and shifting. Something massive was approaching. Her thoughts spiraled. Too soon. I wasn't ready. I didn't even secure a proper shelter. The footsteps stopped. Silence fell, thick and heavy. Then, slowly, the shadow shifted. Zyra didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at her to stay still, to become invisible, to hope the creature, the human, would pass by. But curiosity, that dangerous flaw she had always possessed, betrayed her. She lifted her gaze and saw it, a human. He was enormous, far larger than she had imagined from her training simulations. His form blocked out the sky, his face looming like a living landscape of motion and expression. 2 eyes, dark focused, scanned the ground. Searching, Zyra's breath caught. "He knows I'm here." Her heart pounded, so hard it felt like it might shake the earth itself. She tried to retreat further into grass, but dry twigs snapped beneath her foot. The sound was tiny. To her, it might as well have been an explosion. The human's gaze snapped downward, straight at her. Time seemed to stop. Zyra's body locked in place, every muscle frozen. Her mind screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere to go. No time. The human leaned closer, his expression shifting from confusion to astonishment. "What is that?" he murmured. The voice was deep, resonant, like distant thunder rolling across the sky. Zyra flinched. He had seen her. There was no doubt now. She staggered back, wings flickering to life in a desperate attempt to escape. but they sputtered, weak and unreliable. Not now. Please, not now. A massive hand entered her field of vision, descending, slowly but inexorably. Each finger was thicker than her entire body. The lines of the skin looked like deep valleys. The warmth radiating from it felt suffocating. Zyra's thoughts fractured into panic. This is it. This is how it ends. Captured. Eaten. Just like they said. Please, she whispered, though she knew he couldn't understand. The hand drew closer. Closer. Zyra squeezed her eyes shut and waited for the worst. Zyra didn't feel teeth. She didn't feel pain. Instead, she felt warmth and pressure, gentle, controlled, impossibly precise. Her eyes snapped open. She was no longer on the ground. The human's fingers had closed around her, not crushing, not trapping, but cupping her, as though she were something fragile, something valuable. Zyra's mind struggled to process it. Why isn't he eating me? The world lurched as she was lifted higher and higher. The ground fell away beneath her, the towering blades of grass shrinking into a distant forest. Wind rushed past her, tugging at her hair and wings. She gasped, instinctively gripping onto faint ridges of skin. From this height, everything looked different, vast, open, terrifying. Whoa, easy, the human murmured. The sound vibrated through his hand, deep and rumbling, yet strangely calm. Zyra's heart hammered. He's talking. Why is he talking? Predators don't talk. The human brought her closer to his face. His enormous eyes studied her with intense focus, pupils adjusting as if trying to understand every detail. Zyra held her breath. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Every blink felt like a gust of wind. Every subtle movement carried the weight of something that could end her instantly. And yet, there was no hunger in his expression, only curiosity. You're real, he whispered. Zyra didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Confusion, wonder, not aggression. Still, she didn't trust it. Her wings flickered again, and she pushed against his palm, trying to free herself. The human reacted immediately, not by tightening his grip, but by loosening it. Hey, okay, he said softly. I won't hurt you. Zyra froze. He let go. She hovered weakly above his hand, unsteady, her energy nearly drained. For a moment, she considered fleeing, throwing herself into the open air and hoping for the best. But her wings faltered again. She dropped. The human's hand moved instantly, catching her before she could hit anything. Zyra stared up at him, stunned. He could have let her fall. He didn't. Instead, he lowered his hand slowly, carefully, until she was placed onto a flat surface. A table, smooth, solid, warm from the sunlight streaming through a nearby window. Zyra stumbled slightly as her feet touched down. She spun around, searching for escape routes, for hiding places, but everything was open, exposed. She was completely at his mercy. The human leaned forward, resting his arms on the table, his face still impossibly close. But he didn't reach for her again. He just watched. Zyra narrowed her eyes. What is he waiting for? A tense silence stretched between them. Then the human moved. Zyra flinched, bracing herself. He reached off to the side, grabbing something out her line of sight. When his hand returned, it carried a massive object, soft, pale, uneven. Food. Zyra's stomach twisted. This is it. He's preparing me. Her mind raced through every survival scenario she had been taught. Distract. Escape. Hide. But none of them applied when the predator was this large. The human broke off a tiny piece of food, though to Zyra it was enormous, and gently placed it on the table a short distance away from her. Then he pulled his hand back and pointed, first at the food, then at her. Zyra blinked. What? He leaned back slightly, giving her space. Go ahead, he said softly. She didn't understand the words, but the gesture was clear. He wasn't eating her. He was feeding her. Zyra's thoughts tangled in confusion. Why would a predator feed its prey? Was it a trap? A method of observation? Some strange ritual before consumption? Her instincts screamed at her to stay away. But another feeling crept in. Hunger. She hadn't realized how weak she'd become until now. The crash, the stress, the energy drained from shrinking. Her body was running on almost nothing. Her gaze flicked between the food and the human. He remained still, patient, watching but not advancing. Zyra took a cautious step forward, then another. Every movement felt like a risk. She stopped just short of the food, studying it. It smelled simple, neutral, not toxic, at least not by her species standards. She glanced up at the human. He gave a small, encouraging nod. Zyra hesitated only a moment longer. Then she reached out and broke off the tiniest piece she could manage. She brought it to her mouth, paused, if this is it, and took a bite. Her eyes widened. It was good, soft, mild, easy to consume. Not engineered nutrition like she was used to, but real, organic sustenance. Zyra quickly took another bite, then another. She forgot, briefly, about fear. The human's face lit up. "Hey, you like it?" he said quietly, a smile forming. Zyra froze mid-bite. Slowly, she looked up at him again. There it was, that expression. Not hunger, not dominance. Something else. Something she had never been trained to recognize in humans. Kindness. Zyra swallowed hard. Nothing about this made sense. Humans were supposed to be monsters. So why did this one feel safe? Zyra did not sleep easily. Even inside the small shelter the giant had made for her, a box lined with soft fabric and positioned away from the edge of the table. Her body remained tense, her senses alert. Every sound jolted her awake. A distant creak in the walls, a sudden gust against the window, the low hum of unfamiliar human machines. And then there was him, Eli. She had learned his name not through understanding his language, but through repetition. He would tap his chest gently and say it, slower each time. Eli. At first, she had thought it was a warning, a territorial claim. But the way he said it, it felt more like an offering. Zyra lay curled on the soft material, staring at the dim glow of the room. Why hasn't he eaten me? The question circled endlessly in her mind. It wasn't just that he hadn't harmed her. It was everything else. He gave her food. He gave her water. He gave her space. None of it aligned with her training. Eventually, exhaustion overtook fear. When Zyra woke, light flooded the room. She shot upright, disoriented for a moment, before remembering where she was. Earth. Human dwelling. Captive. Her wings fluttered instinctively as she moved toward the edge of her shelter, peeking out. Eli was there, sitting at the table, staring at that strange glowing rectangle again. His posture was relaxed, one hand occasionally tapping or swiping across its surface. Zyra stepped out cautiously. The surface beneath her feet was still unfamiliar, too smooth, too open. No natural cover, no safe escape routes. She moved anyway. Each step was deliberate, measured. She kept her eyes on him. Eli didn't notice her at first. But then, a sudden burst of sound erupted from the rectangle. Loud, sharp, explosive. Zyra yelped, instinct taking over as she darted backward. Wings buzzing frantically. She dove behind a small object on the table, pressing herself flat against the surface. Her heart raced. Attack? Weapon? Signal? She peeked out cautiously. Eli was laughing. The booming sound that had terrified her was coming from him now. Deep, unrestrained, completely unthreatened. Zyra stared. Why would a predator make that sound willingly? Her confusion deepened. Eli finally noticed her. "Oh, sorry," he said quickly, lowering the volume on the device. "Did I scare you?" Zyra didn't understand the words, but the shift in tone was immediate. Softer, apologetic. He set the rectangle aside and leaned in slightly. "Hey, it's okay," he added gently. Zyra remained frozen. Her instincts told her to stay hidden. But something else, something unfamiliar, kept her from retreating completely. Curiosity. Slowly, she stepped out from behind the object. Eli smiled. Not a predator's baring of teeth, but something different. The corners of his eyes softened. His posture lowered, making himself seem smaller, less imposing. Zyra tilted her head. He's trying to appear less threatening for me. That realization unsettled her more than fear ever had. Communication began in fragments. Eli would point at objects. "This," he'd say, tapping the table. Zyra would watch carefully. He pointed at the water. Water. Then at the food. Food. Then at himself. Eli. Each time, he repeated the sound slowly, as if hoping she would understand. Zyra didn't know his language, but she understood patterns. She began mimicking gestures. When she needed water, she pointed. When she wanted space, she moved away. When she felt overwhelmed, she folded her wings tightly and lowered herself to the ground. Eli started recognizing these signals. He adjusted. He waited. He learned. That, more than anything, unsettled her. Humans don't adapt to smaller species. Her training had said they dominate. But Eli didn't. Later that day, something changed. Eli pointed at himself again. Eli, he said. Then he pointed at her. Zyra stiffened. This again. He waited expectantly. Zyra hesitated. Names were important. In her culture, sharing your name was an act of trust, of vulnerability. And trust was dangerous. She studied him. He wasn't looming over her now. He wasn't reaching. He wasn't forcing anything. He was simply waiting. Patient. Zyra placed a hand on her chest. Zyra, she said softly, her voice like a faint chime in the air. Eli's face lit up immediately. Zyra, he repeated. The sound came out heavier, distorted, but unmistakably an attempt. Zyra's eyes widened. He tried again. Zyra, closer. Zyra felt something shift inside her. A barrier she hadn't realized was there. He had taken her name, and instead of using it as power, he treated it with care. She swallowed. For the first time since arriving on Earth, fear wasn't the strongest feeling in her chest. But misunderstandings didn't disappear. They evolved. At one point, Eli reached toward her too quickly. Zyra reacted instantly, darting backward, wings flaring, a sharp defensive pulse of energy crackling faintly around her. Eli froze mid-motion. Whoa, okay, he said, pulling his hand back immediately. He didn't try again. He didn't force contact. He simply waited for her to calm down. Zyra watched him carefully, her breathing uneven. He stopped, not because he had to, because she reacted, because she was afraid. That realization lingered. As the light outside began to fade, Eli adjusted the environment around her. He moved a small light source closer, soft, not blinding. He placed fresh water nearby. He added more of the soft material to her shelter, improving it. Every action was deliberate, considerate. Zyra sat at the entrance of her tiny refuge, watching him. The giant, the human she had feared more than anything. He yawned, stretched, and eventually settled nearby, his movements slowing as fatigue set in. Before long, his breathing became steady. He had fallen asleep. Zyra remained awake. She studied him in silence. Without motion, without sound, he seemed less overwhelming. Just a being. Not a monster. Not a predator. Just Eli. Zyra hugged her knees, her wings folding gently around her. Her thoughts drifted back to everything she had been taught. Every warning. Every rule. Every certainty. And yet, she was still alive. Not hunted. Not harmed. Not eaten. Instead, protected. Zyra looked toward her damaged pod, barely visible in the distance through the window. Then back at Eli. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. Maybe we were wrong. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, Zyra allowed herself to rest without fear. Zyra woke with a jolt. Something was wrong. At first, she didn't know what had pulled her from sleep. The room was quiet. The soft hum of human technology still filled the air. Eli was still there, resting nearby. But then she felt it. A vibration. Not from footsteps. From something else. Something familiar. Her eyes widened. The pod. She shot up, wings buzzing as she darted out of her shelter. The faint signal pulsed again, weak, unstable, but unmistakable. Her pod's core. It was destabilizing. Zyra's breath hitched. No, this is too soon. She flew toward the edge of the table, looking out the window. In the distance, beyond the towering vegetation, a thin trail of smoke curled into the sky. The pod was overheating. If the core ruptured, the energy release wouldn't just destroy the pod. It would trigger a localized implosion, followed by a burst of radiation her size-adjusted body wouldn't survive. And Eli, her gaze flicked back to him. He wouldn't survive it either. Panic surged through her. She had to act. Zyra darted toward Eli, hovering near his face. "Eli!" she called, her voice ringing like a tiny bell. No response. He shifted slightly but didn't wake. "Zyra, clench your fists. Wake up." She zipped closer, landing briefly on his shoulder before flying up again, waving her arms, trying to create movement in his field of awareness. "Eli." His eyes fluttered open. He blinked, disoriented at first, then focused on her. "Zyra," he murmured. Relief flooded through her, but there was no time. She pointed urgently toward the window, then mimed an explosion with her hands, spreading her arms outward dramatically. Eli frowned, trying to piece it together. "What, something outside?" Zyra nodded rapidly. She pointed again, then again. Her movements grew more frantic. Eli sat up fully now, his expression shifting from confusion to concern. Okay, I'm up," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Show me." Zyra didn't wait. She darted toward the window. Eli followed. When he saw the smoke, his posture changed instantly. "Oh, that's not good." Zyra hovered in front of him, gesturing urgently, pulling, pushing, mimicking opening panels, pressing controls. "Something crashed out there?" Eli guessed. Zyra nodded again. Yes, she whispered. "All right," he said, already grabbing his jacket. "Let's go." The outside world felt even more chaotic than before. The air rushed past as Eli ran, each step shaking Zyra to her core. She clung to the curve of his hand, her tiny fingers gripping tightly as the landscape blurred around them. Every second mattered. She could feel the instability increasing, a rising hum in the air, a pressure building. They reached the crash site. The pod lay where she had left it. But worse, cracks of glowing energy traced across its surface like veins of light. The air around it shimmered faintly, distorted by the unstable core within. Eli slowed, eyes widening. "Whoa, what is that?" Zyra didn't waste time. She jumped from his hand and flew straight to the pod, landing near a partially exposed control panel. "Here," she called instinctively, even knowing he wouldn't understand. She pointed, then she looked back at him. Eli hesitated only a moment before stepping closer. "You want me to do something?" Zyra nodded urgently. She began gesturing in rapid, precise motions, pointing to sections of the panel, mimicking pressing, turning, pulling. Eli crouched down, studying it. "This is definitely not from here," he muttered. Zyra's wings flickered anxiously. "Focus. Please focus." The glow intensified. A sharp crack split across the pod surface. Time was running out. Zyra pointed again, more forcefully this time, directing him to a specific segment. Eli reached out cautiously. "Okay, here." Zyra nodded. He pressed. Nothing. Zyra shook her head, gesturing differently. Press, then slide. "Like this?" he asked, adjusting. The panel shifted. A faint hum changed pitch. Zyra's eyes lit up. "Yes." Encouraged, Eli followed her guidance, moving piece by piece, step by step. It was slow, painfully slow, but it was working. The glow began to flicker. The unstable energy wavered. Zyra hovered close, watching every movement, her heart racing. One wrong action, another crack. A surge of light burst from the core. Zyra flinched. "Almost there," Eli said under his breath, though he didn't know how close they truly were. Zyra pointed to one final control, a small, recessed switch, the fail-safe. She hesitated. If he pressed it too hard, if he missed, but there was no choice. She looked at him. For a brief moment, everything else faded. The fear, the training, the warnings, all of it, and she made a decision. She trusted him. Zyra nodded. Eli took a breath and pressed the switch. Silence. The glow flickered once. Twice. Then, gone. The cracks dimmed. The hum faded into nothing. The air stilled. Zyra hovered in place, barely daring to believe it. It worked. Eli said cautiously. Zyra slowly lowered herself onto his hand as he lifted it. Her legs trembled. Exhaustion hit her all at once. "It worked," she whispered. Eli let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Wow, okay, that was intense. Zyra looked up at him. Really looked. This giant, this human, this being she had been taught to fear above all else. He had listened to her, trusted her, helped her, saved her. Zyra smiled, small but real. Eli noticed. He smiled back. Guess we make a pretty good team, huh? Zyra tilted her head slightly. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the meaning. For the first time, the idea didn't terrify her. It comforted her. She settled gently into his palm as he stood, carrying her back toward the house. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting warm light across the landscape, and Zyra realized something unexpected. She wasn't just safe. She wasn't just surviving. She was home.